I thought losing my tech job and moving into my granddad's old cabin was rock bottom. I mean, if you told me a year earlier that I'd go from Denver's high rises and data streams to watching fog roll across a mountain lake, I would have laughed in your face. But life's got a weird sense of humor, and I guess mine's extra twisted because right when I thought things couldn't get more ridiculous, the HOA taped a no-access sign across the only bridge in. I swear, I went from unemployed to unwelcome overnight. Apparently, I now live in a gated community I never signed up for, and the so-called gate was a retired civics teacher with a citation fetish. She fined me for everything from the height of my mailbox to patriotic enthusiasm. You know what I mean? It was like getting detention from someone who never left the faculty lounge. But the best part? While Margot and her merry band of clipboard wielders were busy quoting bylaws and puffing up their chests, they forgot one tiny detail. My bridge wasn't theirs to block. Not even close. Let me back up a sec and tell you how I ended up squaring off with an HOA that thought it could out-stubborn the grandson of the man who literally built the road in. 6 months after getting the boot from my job. By the way, I wasn't just let go, I was blacklisted for exposing a major corporation's data breach. Top that with a divorce and a bank account limping along on its last legs, and you'll see why the old family cabin felt like a lifeline. So I packed up what was left of my pride and moved to Pine Lake, Colorado, a patchwork community of about 30 houses hugging a deep blue lake. My grandfather bought this land back in the 50s, long before anyone thought of homeowners associations or community standards. When I got there, all I wanted was a little peace, maybe a fresh start. Instead, the welcome wagon rolled up with a scowl and a clipboard. Enter Margot Keller, president of the Pine Lake HOA, her navy blazer swallowing her frame. Glasses so thick they made her eyes look cartoonish, bun wound tight enough to keep out stray thoughts. "Excuse me," she started, like she was already disappointed. "I'm Margot Keller, president of the HOA. You can't park here. This bridge is community property. Unauthorized vehicles are prohibited." Her voice had that practiced, teacherly tone, the kind you hear right before a pop quiz. I tried to be polite, showed her the deed, tax bills, told her I was Dave Morrison, that I'd inherited the cabin. She barely glanced at my proof before launching into a monologue about community standards. "Property ownership doesn't automatically grant unlimited access rights, Mr. Morrison. The bridge serves the community, and we have regulations." Then, with a flourish, she pulled out her citation book. "Your American flag violates our guidelines. Personal flags can't exceed a 2:1 ratio compared to the HOA display." I stared at my little flag, then at the HOA's monster banner out front. Yeah, the math didn't check out. So there I was day one, already cited for improper flag display. She handed me a packet thick as a cinder block. "You'll need to complete the full orientation process since your grandfather never registered the property." That night, I read every word. Regulations for lawn height, paint color, mailbox shape, even the angle you're allowed to park your car. It was like Big Brother moved to the mountains and got really into gardening. Most rules seemed designed less for order and more for control, and more than a few flat-out contradicted each other. Next morning, new day, new citation. Mailbox was 2 inches too low. I measured 36 inches on the dot, but the handbook said base to bottom, not top, so guess who was wrong? 20 minutes later, I jacked up the post, only for Margot to show up again and ding me for parking my car at the wrong angle. Driveway orientation, Mr. Morrison, must be parallel to the property line. And, you guessed it, the grandfather driveway didn't count anymore. It became a running joke. 7 more citations in the next 10 days. Garden gnome was non-regulation, porch light too bright. Wrong plant species in the flower bed. Every visit came with a lecture. "I taught civics for 20 years, Mr. Morrison. Rules create order." It wasn't just the money, though the fines were eating up what was left of my savings. It was the way she talked to me, like I was a kid who couldn't grasp basic instructions. I pointed out once that her own property didn't follow the handbook. Her face hardened, but she just pressed her pen harder and issued another citation for visible trash cans. After 2 weeks and almost $3,000 in fines, I developed a nervous tic, checking the road for Margot's car before I dared to step outside. I started reading up on HOA law, trying to figure out if I had any rights at all. Turns out, HOAs have power, but not infinite power. And in the process, I stumbled on something interesting. Margot was citing me under a bylaw amendment that, by their own rules, should have required a 30-day notice and a community vote, neither of which happened. I figured if I was going down, I'd at least go down fighting. I showed up at the next board meeting. It was me, 15 retirees, and enough bad coffee to caffeinate an army. I tried to be civil, told them I wanted to be a good neighbor, but the citations were excessive. Margot fired back with, "Your grandfather understood community standards." Folks nodded along like she was Moses coming down mountain. After the meeting, a younger woman, Lena Brooks, a paralegal, pulled me aside. "She's been getting worse, Dave. Most folks just pay the fines to avoid the hassle. But what she's doing to you, that's personal." Cue Frank Weber, board member, big house, big smile. "Dave, I can help you navigate all this. Margot's strict, but if you show you're willing to play ball, things you'll get easier." He even lent me his hedge trimmer, told me to pick the easy violations and show progress. For a week, I did everything right. New shrubs, smaller flag, approved paint. Frank stopped by to check on my progress, always with a knowing smile. But that feeling of being watched, it never really went away. Then the twist hit. One morning, I found a formal complaint about excessive noise, specific details only someone inside my house could know. The complaint matched things I'd only mentioned to Frank. When I called him, he stammered through excuses, finally admitted Margot had asked him to keep an eye out. Turns out in Pine Lake, your neighborly handshake is just as likely to be a surveillance tool. When I reached out to other neighbors, the pattern was the same, sympathy but distance. No one wanted to cross Margot. The real control wasn't just citations, it was fear, people policing each other, so she didn't have to. And then, one morning, things went nuclear. Construction crews rolled up and blocked the bridge with wooden barriers. Bridge closed for safety inspection, authorized personnel only. Margot, ever the showman, stood by with her clipboard and a fake safety report. Suddenly, I was cut off. No job interviews, no groceries, no internet. 10 days of hiking through the woods just to get the mail. I hiked into the next board meeting, desperate and angry. The room was packed. I lost my cool, called out the absurdity of their rules, asked if they wanted a community or a prison camp. Dead silence. Margot waited for the tension to thicken, then calmly suggested maybe I needed time to understand community values. I'd become a cautionary tale. That night, ready to throw in the towel, I sat in my grandfather's favorite chair and realized this wasn't just about rules. It was about legacy. He built that bridge. He paid those taxes. He stood up for his family. Was I really going to let a bureaucrat erase all that? I started digging through the attic, dust thick as cake flour, boxes full of old paperwork and memories. In a cookie tin, I found the motherlode, permits, tax receipts, county letters from the 60s, all confirming the bridge was, and always had been, private property paid for and maintained by my family. The next morning, I marched down to the county clerk. "That bridge is yours," Curtis Myers said, "always has been." Armed with this, I teamed up with Lena and laid out every document, every payment, every map. The HOA had been trespassing for decades. Margot's community property claim was a paper tiger. At the next emergency meeting, I dropped the bomb, passed out county documents, permits, tax records, the works. Margot brought a lawyer, but even he had to admit the evidence was airtight. Curtis stood up and back and vouched for everything. "Dave owns that bridge. Always has. You folks have been using his property by his goodwill." Suddenly, the crowd shifted. Some residents realized I could shut them out, or worse, charge fees. Margot tried one last time to control the narrative, but her authority was slipping. As the meeting broke up, she approached me. No clipboard, no script, just a hint of respect and maybe fear in her eyes. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately," she said. For once, she wasn't dictating terms. I let the community stew for 2 days, then posted my own sign at the bridge. "Private bridge, please nod. thank you. A rope barrier, just high enough to force people to acknowledge it. Most neighbors nodded and crossed. Margot refused at first, but after a week of detours, she called and asked to meet. At the cafe for the first time, she looked tired, maybe even vulnerable. I laid out my terms, drop the fines, refund my money, record a public apology, establish an annual Freedom Week with no citations, and pay $$25,000 for a permanent easement. Margot balked, but I stood my ground. These are lessons, not punishments. Actions have consequences. Monday, the vote came in, my terms accepted. The apology was awkward, but real. The money helped me get back on my feet, and more important, the HOA changed its rules. Board approval became mandatory for any action affecting individual property rights. Life went on. 6 months later, I was still in the cabin, this time by choice. My story spread. Other communities called for help with their own HOA nightmares. Turns out, standing up to bullies is contagious. I become the local legend, the guy who beat the HOA. And that old bridge, it still stands stronger than ever, a testament to one man's stubbornness and a community's lesson in respect. So, if you're listening, here's what I learned. You can't count on goodwill alone to protect your rights, but you can count on clear records and the guts to stand up when it matters. Bullies only have as much power as you let them. Sometimes the best way to teach respect is by requiring it. A nod, a handshake, a story passed down neighbor to neighbor. Justice isn't just about winning. Sometimes it's about making sure nobody else gets steamrolled by a clipboard ever again. So what do you think? Was I right to fight, or did I go too far? Should communities protect themselves at all costs? Or is there a line where order becomes oppression? Drop your thoughts below. Where's the line between community and control? And what would you have done in my shoes?